I've only met 3 or 4 truly evil people, Chris. They've done evil things, but you love the sinner, you hate the sin. Is that people make poor decisions. Life circumstances comes people's way, but there's only been a few evil people out of thousands of bad people. And so I want to respect them. Because think of it this way, at the end of Game 7 of the World Series or the Stanley Cup, those people have been fighting, hitting, punching, whatever the case may be. What do they do after the game? They shake hands. They shake hands. They respect. I want to be able to respect you as a human being on this earth.
Hello, and welcome to the Healthy Wealth Experience. I'm your host, Chris Hall, and today I have a very special guest with me, Brad Beeler. Brad Beeler is a retired Secret Service special agent. He was with the service for 25 years. He's conducted more criminal polygraph examinations than anyone in agency history. He's protected President George H.W. Bush and other foreign heads of state. He was named Secret Service Agent of the Year for combating crimes against children in 2015. He has a book coming out called Tell Me Everything, which should be released February 17th of 26. And that is what we're going to be talking about today is the communication strategies for earning trust, detecting deception, and getting anyone to open up. So you may be asking yourself, what does that have to do with healthy wealth? Brad is a very fit man, and he's been doing very stressful work. If you think your job is stressful, imagine what his job is like. And so he was able to maintain fitness, but also leverage his fitness into doing phenomenal things in communication, which we all need in business. So without further ado, thank you, Brad, for being here.
Appreciate the opportunity to talk to your listeners, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
That's awesome. I'm glad to have you. Your bio is pretty exciting. So let's start off with just kind of the basics. I kind of gave you a little rundown on what you've done. What made you want to go into the Secret Service? Like, how did that come about?
You know, kind of a young kid growing up, always a protector. I was that guy and I'm dating myself, but maybe some of your listeners would understand this, but kind of grew up watching Chips in the 70s and 80s, wanting to be Poncherello and John Baker, driving around on my green machine and my little, toys and stuff like that. So always want to arrest the bad guy, being the person in the white hat. And went to grad school for criminology, so thought I was going to teach this stuff. Why do people commit crime? And as part of that, we do an internship, and I did an internship with the Secret Service, and I was absolutely blown away by the mission, the selfless service that these men and women did, and more importantly, just the camaraderie they had getting to travel the world and do the things and see the things that they did. Is that I was very impressed and made that my life goal, and about 4 years later, was fortunate enough to be able to get into the Secret Service.
Okay, so which are you? Are you Ponch or are you Baker?
I would probably say Ponch. I liked Ponch. He had a little comedy relief. He wasn't straight. Well, he wasn't the straight guy. So Ponch kind of went out there. So yeah, I think I was more Ponch.
I love that. That's awesome. That's a great analogy. And I do hope that connects with people because that's a fun analogy. Okay, so you were with the service for 25 years. You, like I said, conducted more criminal polygraph examinations than anyone else in agency history, which clearly makes you an expert on communication. Tell us a little bit about that and like your role in doing polygraph.
Yeah, so for the Secret Service, we use polygraph to basically vet our applicants. But another aspect that we use is because we rely on the local law enforcement community for investigations and protection, we try to leverage the resources that we have, and polygraph being one of them, to kind of give back to them. So I was fortunate in Chicago, St. Louis, South Carolina, and other places that I was at to kind of liaison with the local law enforcement and be able to work a lot of their homicides and child sexual assault cases, because polygraph, I won't get into the specifics. It's a little controversial topic, but as far as in those types of cases where you have he said, she said, you don't have a lot of physical evidence, it's a great technology to utilize. And, fortunately or unfortunately, I had to talk to some of these bad people and go to some dark places to try to get some resolution. But it was a great way to kind of give back to the community and, give back to local law enforcement for all they do in the rest of our mission.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be pretty stressful. We do, it is healthy wealth. So we do want to talk about like, what is your regimen for both mental and physical health to stay, on point for such a stressful job?
Yeah, always been into fitness, played college soccer, and just always appreciated the cardiovascular aspect. Kind of got dared to do an Ironman triathlon. So I kind of checked that off the box, and always, 3-4 times a week hitting the free weights. But it wasn't till I got in the Secret Service that a buddy of mine, I was dealing with the emotional strain of talking to a lot of really, really bad people, especially people that hurt kids. And, it's hard not to bring that home mentally. So one of my friends and a PhD that I know really recommended doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I got into that as a way to cope. The reason being is because you have to be 100% focused when you're on the mats. And for people that don't know what Jiu-Jitsu is, it's an art form that's been around for about 100 years out of Brazil. Came over from Japan in the form of judo, but it's a grappling art. And it's just a really great way to stay in shape. And I have to mentally be present. And when I'm mentally present there, I'm definitely not mentally present in having to talk to the bad person I did the night before. So it was a really good way to cope and also stay in shape.
It's funny how many, I started doing this for a while and there's so many corollaries. I have interviewed Tanner Rice from Rice Brothers Jiu-Jitsu. They're internationally known for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Roy Gracie kind of stuff. And then I just interviewed and should release, I think this Sunday, coming up pretty soon, we should have a release on Rich Franklin. So when he was middleweight champion for UFC.
Yeah, bad guy. So and I mean that in a good way. He's a bad guy in the arena. I wouldn't want to get punched by Rich, but he was a pioneer. Definitely interesting man.
And I love, and again, jujitsu, I think, for people who don't understand jujitsu, it is like a superpower. You could take somebody twice your size and manipulate them in the way you want to do it if you know how to do those moves. And so I've always been really jealous of that. People who do jujitsu. I did it for probably 6 to 8 months with my kids and I enjoyed it. But what happened with me is the one we went to, they wanted us to roll all the time. And I have an inner ear thing, and I kept getting dizzy just in warm-ups, and I'm like, this is not going to be a long time pursuit for me.
Yeah, it's tough. And the thing I like about it, Chris, is one, there's thousands of different moves and, positional aspects of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But if you look at it, every year in the World Championship, when they look at the stats, really it's 5 techniques that win most of the matches. So you can kind of go down this rabbit hole of learning all these things. But to me, it's a metaphor on business, that whole 80-20 Pareto principle where 20% of your actions create 80% of your results. And in jiu-jitsu, it's the same way, is that there's a small number of things where if you can master them, you can become very, very good at it. So it's all about doing that kind of autopsy on your business, autopsy on your financial picture, and find out what's working and how can I double down on that. So that's something that I've really taken away from jiu-jitsu is what can I master what matters most and be comfortable at being uncomfortable, because there's a lot of situations, like you said, on the mats where you can be uncomfortable, and you got to embrace that there's going to be those stormy times, and you got to be able to weather them, so to speak. So that's what I get out of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I like that. And I feel like that, when it comes to, jiu-jitsu and business, they're very similar in the fact that it's the same discipline, right? Like if you get up in the morning and you don't want to go to work, you cannot go to work if you don't want to sometimes, but then you have to pay the price for that. Same thing with jiu-jitsu. If you don't want to focus, you don't have to focus, but you're going to get slammed. So
yeah,
I really like the correlation.
The other aspect about that, Chris, is I wish in business and organizations we had the principle where in jiu-jitsu, if I'm rolling with you, we can take it all the way to the end to where I'm literally choking you or I'm about to break your bone. And all you have to do is just tap me twice and I'll stop. And the instant feedback and the pattern recognition you get and the way you can red team a scenario to its fullest to see what works and what doesn't work. And that's the great thing, is that you can come up with a new idea or a new strategy in jiu-jitsu and you can try it out and battle test it, over the course of a very short period of time. And you can see, and that doesn't work. I need to try something else. And I wish in business we could, if we're going to market something or we're going to put something out there, that we could kind of battle test it the way we can do things in jiu-jitsu, because the things that worked in 1925 in jiu-jitsu, the things that worked still work today. And you can innovate, but you can battle test that innovation. So I really wish we could do that in the business world. But it also says, if you're going to try something out, to try to put it in a real world scenario as much as possible and get it out of the laboratory to see if it does work in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah. So with regards to the polygraph stuff, I mean, it's really obviously made you an expert on communication and body language, et cetera. Can you tell us a little bit about how you transition that into business communication? How that's the title of your book is Tell Me Everything. It's communication strategies for earning trust, detecting deception, and getting anyone to open up. And so to me, that's very business oriented. It's very salesmanship, business owner type thing. How did you take the information that you had and use it for this purpose? Yeah.
So if I'll start big and then we can maybe check them off one of the box, but if somebody feels comfortable enough to tell you the deepest, darkest secret of their life, they're going to be comfortable enough to tell you everything. And so the way I like to start that is with preparation on the front end. Imagine good communication is like a good podcaster, right? So I would assume that before you bring people on your podcast, you do research on them, right? You look at their other podcasts, you may read their book to try to get some touch points, pain points, things that you might want to bring up that might be good for your listeners. Then you're going to have a good introduction. You're going to talk to them in the green room just to kind of soften them up a little bit, get to know them a little bit, right? And then you're going to do the introduction. You're going to get into the topical areas. You're going to find out what is interesting to your listeners. You're going to let them talk about 80% of the time. And then you're going to put some guardrails up where you're going to keep it from going down a certain rabbit hole, and you're going to kind of keep the car on the track, so to speak, to make it interesting for your viewers. A good podcaster is like good communication. And when you look at bad podcasters, what do? They monopolize the conversation. They make it about them, right? They don't create an environment. They're judgy when somebody says something. They may disagree with the guest that they have on, and that's a bad communication. So for me, everybody thinks they're the hero of their own story. I've talked to a lot of bad people. They truly do. No one wants to hear and be judged. The way I look at communication, Chris, is it's less about providing that speech, that TED Talk, that that sermon. That's hitting the play button. That's you not being interrupted. For me, good communication is almost like a Catholic confessional, to where I've created the right environment where they're not being judged. I'm not furrowing my brow. I'm letting them talk, and I'm providing them some type of service because they've probably never told anyone the thing that they're about to tell me, right? And a good supervisor, a good husband, a good wife is going to try to create that same type of setting for their kids, for their coworkers, colleagues, whatever the case may be. Is you have to prepare for that interaction. You have to pick the right time for that interaction.
We are at
too many times I see in business leaders, they'll bring people in at 9:15 after they got in for an hour and a half commute to have that conversation. Or 4:30 when they're getting ready to walk out the door, they'll try to have that conversation. So picking the right time, picking the right place, getting yourself in the right headspace, getting them in the right headspace, and then just, once again, being front to the lines, having a great handshake that's dry and warm, not being guarded, ventrally fronting. So we show our heart to heart to where we show we have interest, putting that phone away to where it's not, causing us issues as far as it vibrating or making a sound, or just the fact that we have this present shows that we think there might be something more important than this communication that we're about to be in. So truly putting that phone away. And then once again, just providing that person the opportunity in a non-judgment sense and being curious about people. I think curiosity is one of the things that people don't utilize. It's this transactional talk. I talk, you talk, I talk, you talk. It's like our text streams, our asynchronous communication, where we throw a couple emojis on it. And now we've had this conversation is that I want to be able to look in the eyes. Right now I can see, are you tracking with what I'm saying? Are you maybe agreeing or not agreeing? Did you maybe not understand that and I need to clarify it? We have lyrics, which are the words of the spoken communication. We have the soundtrack, which is how I say it. And then we got the music video. And we got to put all those things together. And all you get in texting is just the lyrics. So that's why I like, forums like this, because I can look into your eyes and see if you're tracking.
I've never heard the analogy of the soundtrack, the music. That's a great analogy of how it all has to come together to have a good music video. That's great. And I it's funny because you had mentioned the phone in business. As a financial advisor, when I meet with clients, I find myself, with my phone on the desk somewhere, but it's usually upside down, which it's still the mental cue that, like, if somebody else calls and it's super important, I'm going to take it. And so I try really hard to take the off vibrate and put it on silent completely and throw it in a desk drawer so that it can't be seen. Not necessarily by me, because I don't think I've ever answered my phone in a client appointment. I'm sure I have. You know what I mean? I say that out loud, and of course someone's going to be like, "You did," but I would say, like, just the visual cue of having the phone not anywhere to be found lets them know that you are there. So I think that's an excellent point you made.
Yeah, and like for me, I'll make it a point to where I appear that I'm shutting my phone off when I'm talking to that person, because I want them to truly know that this is all about you. It's not about me. And that's the way you got to think about it, is it's not about me, it's about them. Same thing in financial advising, right? Is you probably talking to people that made a really poor decision. They keep leasing that car every year that's over and above their means, whatever the case may be. And you want to be curious and not judgmental as to far why they're doing that, because people don't want to hear potentially your judgment as to them making that decision. They want to be in a new car every year. All right.
True. That's true. So when it comes to, like, you said body language, you had kind of like, you did a 30,000 foot view. Let's go ahead and break it down. You had said something about like heart to heart, things like that. Can you go by some more of the pieces in greater detail, please?
Yeah. Yeah, real quick. So like literally I'll get as granular as you need to be, but I'll put antiperspirant on my hands in the morning. I'm already putting them on my armpits. I'm going to put it on my hands. My right hand, that's what every handshake is. So you're never going to get a wet handshake. That's the worst thing in a handshake, is a wet handshake, right? If I'm seated at an event and somebody's going to come over and meet me, if they can't see my hands, one of my hands is probably going to be sitting under my hamstring. It's going to keep it warm and dry. If they can't see me and I'm coming around the corner, I'll actually warm my hands up, because that's the second worst part of a handshake. It's cold. So now you're going to get a warm, dry handshake. I'm going to meet you right at your navel, equidistant away. It's going to be a hold, not a shake, and I'm going to be roughly at about a 2 o'clock position. Reason being, I want to show you the lightest part of on my body is the palms of my feet and the palms of my hand. And I want you to pronate, which makes it comfortable for you. So you'll be at about a 10 o'clock position. So that'll be a nice handshake. We'll have a nice landing area. I'm going to have eye contact all the way up to the point where I look at your hands for the connection, so we don't miss, because that's another worst part of a handshake, is when you don't get that good connection. It's going to be at a 45-degree angle. Then we go back to eye contact. And when I say ventral fronting, what does a dog do, Chris, when it feels comfortable with you? It rolls over, right?
Oh, right.
And it lets you pet its belly. Is that if I blade my body and turn my body to the side, which a lot of police officers we do because it makes us a better target, but that's the same thing people do in boxing, right? It's this natural instinct. We lower our chin, we turn our shoulders. The problem with that is that's not a friend sign, okay? You're going to release cortisol in that other person. So I'm going to have my chin as far as I can away from my shoulders. That shows confidence. I may give you a little eyebrow flash when we meet. That shows interest and lack of contempt. And every once in a while, I'm going to kick my ears to the left and to the right. The reason being is that's going to show my carotid. In nature, we typically won't do that if we're in a threatening situation. So once again, nice little friend signs that have been proven through science that I'm going to give off to you. I'm going to use your first name a lot. I'm going to say Chris a lot in that interaction. And I'm not going to introduce myself. I'm not going to introduce myself with my title. I'm not going to say I'm senior special agent. I'm Brad. People don't confess to a title, they confess to a person. So in business, don't get caught up in your titles. I'm the supervisor of this, I'm that. I mean, they know who you are. Just introduce yourself as your first name, because that's where it's going to be less transactional and more about a relationship, right? Is that we don't want a simple transaction. We want a relationship that has multiple transactions. So I always make sure the same way. I don't try to manipulate people. I may try to influence them. When you manipulate people, you may get a short-term game. You may win the battle, but you're going to lose the war. And that's not what I want to do. Interrogation for me is talking to people just like I talk to you, using influence principles, reciprocity, certain things like that I can hopefully increase the chances of getting truthful information from the person. So from a body language standpoint, I'm going to have measured movements that are typically from my clavicles to my navel. If I go higher, it's threatening. If I go lower, has a different connotation. And those movements are going to try to accentuate my spoken word. I'm also going to have a slightly deeper tone when I initially start talking to you, because a higher pitched voice is programmed into your brain as that's threatening, that's stress. Before 911 and radios, a higher pitched voice carried further into the fields to summon help. So if I subtly deepen my voice, if I am a little bit nervous, I'm going to slow down just a little bit. And as a result of that, by putting all that together, putting that music video together, so to speak, I'm going to come across as being a more confident individual. Is that I can give you the world's best speech, Chris, but if you deliver it poorly, it would be much less received, it'd be received much more poorly than if I gave you a terrible script, but you delivered it effectively with good body language. So for me, before presentations, when I'm looking at my students, when I'm teaching them interviewing, I will have them on video, and then I'll have them watch the video on silent just to see their body language. Then I'll turn the TV off and I'll have them just listen to it. And then I'll provide a transcription of it, and then I'll have them read it. And they need to be able to improve all three of those independently. And once they see their script, they're like, oh, that was terrible. Once they hear themselves, they're like, oh my God, I'm so nasally, right? I'm boring. I have no vocal inflection. And once they watch themselves, they're like, oh my God, I'm so boring with my body language, or I'm spastic, either way. And that's the only way to really, in my sense, evaluate those types of things from a communication standpoint.
Yeah. And, like you see in the, obviously on TV, cop shows, things like that, that most people, when they think of interrogation or communication, they're like really aggressive. And you actually say the opposite. So can you walk us through how you actually get people to confess?
Yeah. So I guess I would look at it like this way, and I'll just throw you a scenario. All right. And if you read this in my book, just play along. But what do you think should happen to this person? Okay. This person's a short individual. He was born in the late 1890s. He served his country in World War I, was actually decorated for his service, but he led his military juggernaut in World War II. And despite being a veteran, he was introverted. He became much more extroverted through some of his speeches, which I'm sure you saw in the 1930s and 40s. And his actions led to the burning deaths of, let's just focus on over 1 million people. So if we just say what should happen to that person at the Nuremberg trials, and I won't tell you who he is. I won't show a picture of him. I just say, what do you think should happen? Just snapshot judgment. What do you think should happen to the Nuremberg trials if he was ever tried? What should happen to that person?
That they were at, I would hang him by a yard arm.
Okay. And that would make sense, right? Without any context. But if I told you that person is Harry S. Truman, would that change?
I knew it was coming.
Yeah, he knew it was coming, right? And it's not about a gotcha. What it is like everybody's a hero of their own adventure. We have to look at everybody through their own individual lens. If I was interrogating Adolf Hitler, which is obviously, who people would think of. I do the same thing with bin Laden and George Washington as far as a tall guy versus a short guy. But if I'm going to interrogate Osama bin Laden, I would have to talk to him like he's, George Washington. And that's tough. That's tough to do, right? Because you see the person, you see the caricature of the bad person, right? All the propaganda and the actual bad things that they did. But I have to view them through the prism of what's going to put them in the right headspace, as we discussed earlier, the hero of their own adventure. So I will be their buddy. It's an acronym I like to use when I talk to people, is that, so for instance, if we're Harry S. Truman and I try to be your buddy and I'm interrogating you, who would I blame? I blame the Empire of Japan. Harry, we were isolationists. We were minding our own business. We were supporting financially the Russians and the British, but by and large, we were staying out of the war. And what did the Empire of Japan did? They killed 3,000 of our soldiers and sailors and airmen on one day at Pearl Harbor. They picked the fight. Then I would go to the U. I would understand where he's coming from. Harry, I understand that you felt like you needed to drop the bombs in Hiroshima and the fire bombings of 17 Japanese cities because you were reading the reports from Saipan, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. You knew that they were not going to give up. I would diminish the impact by saying, Harry, yes, a lot of people and a lot of lives were lost by your actions. But if we would have had to invade mainland Japan, we saw what was happening in Okinawa. These people were not going to give up. Is that instead of 1 million people dying, it would have been 5 million. You saved lives by doing what you were doing. I would demonstrate tactical empathy by saying, Harry, it's kind of like an ER surgeon, and he or she is there working their shift, and a horrific accident happens, and a young kid comes in with a mangled leg, and you've got to make a split-second decision on, do I take this leg or not? There's a chance if I don't take the leg, the kid may die. But by taking it, I'm basically saying that kid's never going to run again. And you had to make a really, really hard decision, but you made the best of the worst decisions. And Harry, look, and then I would focus on the why of Buddy. I'd say, Harry, look, it happened. We can't change history. But the thing about it is, any other person that had this power historically would have used it for negative. They would have taken over the world. They would have extorted the world. What did you do? Through the Marshall Plan, you rebuilt the world. You ushered in some of the most peaceful times on the planet because you're a great man and the buck stops with you. All right. So, Harry, let's talk about this. Right. So that's an interrogation of Harry Truman if history would have changed. But if I was talking to Adolf Hitler, I would have to do some of the same things, and I'd have to do it without judgment or contempt. And sometimes that's hard to do because when I'm talking to a pedophile, the things that they do, I have to put that mask on to be able to get them to open up, or else what's the point? They're not going to tell me the what or the why.
Wow. That's excellent. I mean, what a great analogy for, the whole thing we talked about earlier, which is everybody's the hero in their own story. I mean, that's just, and the way you can just really quickly walk them down the path where, of course, they want to tell you everything. They want to be like, oh, yeah, of course, you're right. And I had to, so that is really good. You also talk about the SCORE framework for building trust. Can you break that down for me?
Yeah, basically, we look at some influence principles, and some of these are from Cialdini. They've been around, for many, many years, is that social proof. If I'm about to engage in an interaction, right? And some of this goes back to, and I'm not trying to cheapen it, but, if you go to buy a timeshare, it's financially not a good decision. Can we agree, you as a financial advisor, that timeshares are probably not a good idea? But what do? A lot of times you go there, they give you $500 off or a couple free nights, right? And you go and they give you the nice tour. And when they sit you down, right, all of a sudden you see some people dinging a gong or getting some balloons, and they're very happy, right, that they got this timeshare. Those are not real people. Those are people that work there that are plants, right? Many, many times, right? And it's social proof, right? Like if you go to 2 barbecue places, like I use my buddy's situation in Charleston. He owns Hyman Seafood in Charleston. And if you're ever in Charleston walking on King Street, you're going to see a line out the door. You're going to see a line out the door on King Street.
I love
and
that.
which seafood place are you going to go to, right? Which barbecue place are you going to go to? The one with the line out the door or the one with 10 people inside, right? So social proof is very important. The way I used this in a case one time on a homicide is this individual was very anti-law enforcement. I asked the police dispatcher, I said, hey, can you come in? And I said, we're going to create a scenario. And I said, and this is where you got to be careful about influence versus manipulation, I said to him, look, when this guy comes into the room, He's going to talk to me. But I said, I want you at that point to give me a big hug. And I want you to say, Brad, thanks for letting me get that off my chest. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being a stand-up guy. And I want you to walk out the exit sign. Now, that was orchestrated. But what does this guy see? Now, I don't know if the guy did the bad thing or not. So I'm doing this for both truthful and potentially guilty people, is that what he saw was an interaction in which he felt like this guy's fair. This guy will listen to me. All right, this guy's not going to judge me. Now, if he was a truthful individual, that would have brought his cortisol levels down, would have brought his heart rate down. I would have given an opportunity for him to tell me the truth. Now, he was guilty. And 12 hours later, he led my partner and I to the deceased female that he'd killed. So that interaction by doing social proof was important. Now, the next part of that is curiosity. Curiosity is so important, is that I talk about family, education, employment, but I really like to talk about leisure activities with people, Chris, because for 80 hours a week, you have a choice on what you choose to do outside of work. Maybe family, maybe jiu-jitsu like me, but I ask you that question. What do you like to do in your free time, Chris?
I enjoy coaching my son in football, and I enjoy hanging out with my fiance, whether that be vacationing or going to dinner or just hanging out on the couch.
What was your favorite vacation memory with your fiance?
So far, I would say Hawaii. We went to Maui last year. It was awesome.
Oh, man, that's so cool. What part of Maui did you go to?
We were up in Kahana, which is a little bit above Kaanapali.
Yeah, yeah. What was your favorite part about it?
I like the relaxed nature of a beach vacation in general, but it was just really nice. We were fairly newly together, so it was just nice getting to know each other. And
yeah, you probably remember how the pineapple tasted. You probably remember the road to Hana. You probably remember.
Not do the road to Hana.
Okay, all right. Probably not a bad thing. Yeah, that scary drive over there. The part about the reason I bring that up, is I got a shared experience with that, Chris. But I want to let you bathe in that dopamine. I want you to tell me about it. I want you to remember the sights and the sounds. If I was trying to get information or form a relationship with you, the great part about that is you're not, don't have any cortisol during that time frame. And you're associating me with all the goodness of this conversation. The worst thing I could have done is the moment you mentioned Maui, I said, oh, I did my honeymoon in Maui. Oh, I was in Kaanapali too. I was up in Kana too. Yeah. What did I just do? I don't hear any of that other story.
You took it and put it on you.
Yeah. And yet we all do it, right?
Yeah.
We're on a plane and we start talking about running and, I'm going to Chicago to do the marathon. Oh, I did the Chicago Marathon. People are so into me too. They don't really talk to people. It's just this transactional conversation. So, for the business people out there, is that you really need to let people bathe in that dopamine before you enter into the conversation. Let them talk about it. So curiosity for me is huge. Observation. Too many times, what are we doing? We're on our phone. We're looking away. We set up our office to where we're not fronting with the person. We're showing them no interest. I want to be able to look. Like right now, I see some interesting things in the background of your podcast, right? Like I'm seeing, and I can't really make it out, right? The picture behind you and, the figurines and the books. But if I do search warrants, what I'll do is I'll go in the house and I'll look at everything, the DVD collection, the cassettes, the Bible. What chapter of the Bible is the person on? And this is not something you're going to do in business, but I remember on a search warrant, I'm going through the guy's house and I see the Bible's at the book of Matthew and it's got bookmarked and underlined and highlighted and it's talking about when Peter was called out of the boat. And it's crazy because I don't know how I'm going to use this in my subsequent interaction with the individual. But during the conversation with him, I brought up how I was really taken aback a couple of weeks ago, how my pastor had brought up Peter being caught out of the boat and how he was scared and how, he was told he could walk on water, but he had a lack of commitment. He was afraid and the wind was whipping and the waters were, really tormenting the boat and he didn't have that lack of commitment. He felt like he was drowning. And John, I feel like you're drowning right now. And I feel like you got a lack of commitment right now. And I want you to trust me. And I reached out my hand and he shook it and he started crying. Is that we had a connection point over something like that. And normally I don't talk religion when I'm talking to people, but he had brought it up and that was kind of a conduit to that. So it's amazing by looking at situations, what you can get from that. And then respect. Respect is amazing in that the bad people you're talking to, okay, they may be maladjusted, but I've only met 3 or 4 truly evil people, Chris. They've done evil things, but you love the sin or you hate the sin. Is that people make poor decisions. Life circumstances comes people's way, but there's only been a few evil people out of thousands of bad people. And so I want to respect them because think of it this way. At the end of Game 7 of the World Series or the Stanley Cup, those people have been fighting, hitting, punching, whatever the case may be. What do they do after the game? They shake hands. They shake hands. They respect. I want to be able to respect you as a human being on this earth. And last, the exchange is that when people come to your house, what do? There's the restroom. There's water. Can I get you something to eat? All right. There are people out there that because this person is a bad person or they did that one bad thing and they'll be on a search warrant and that person doesn't have a coat outside and they don't have shoes on and they're like, screw them. Excuse my language. I'm not going to go get them the shoes or the coat. It's cold outside. I don't care. They're a bad person. But yet I go in and I get them a coat. I go in and give them something to drink. Hey, can you use the restroom? I go in and get their shoes. After they confess to me that bad thing, I say, well, what made you talk to me, John? Well, you treated me like a human being. Right? So I will get things to people. I will provide things to people because people will then use reciprocity to provide those things back to you. So I do it because it's the right thing to do. I'm not doing it from a transactional standpoint, although that is there, even if they don't take you up on it. The fact that you offered something to somebody many, many times, they're going to provide that back to you either then or some other time. So I'm a big fan of that principle. And I think if done correctly, it's not manipulation, but it's about subtle influence.
I think the manipulation. Sorry, I think the manipulation part is really the intention, right? Is that are you trying to connect or are you trying to manipulate? So, perfect example, just using it for like all the things you just said, I fairly much do in my practice all the time. People come in as a prospect. First thing we do is, hey, we've got this fridge full of sodas and waters, and I even have chilled peanut butter cups. Like you want something, you want a snack, you want something to eat. You want something to drink, then they come and sit down and I don't go like, tell me about your money, first thing I say is like, tell me about yourself. Like, how'd you get how'd you get in this chair? Like, how'd you even hear about us? Like, how'd you, what have you done so far? Those kinds of things. And again, going back to what you're saying is like, if they say like, I've done X, Y, Z, you don't go, that was dumb, like,
stupid.
Now I know why you're here, like you go, oh no, yeah. I mean, if anything, to do a lot of what you do is I'll say, oh, I actually have made that same mistake because that's humans, right? We're humans. We make mistakes. And I think one of the things that makes me a phenomenal financial advisor is because I've made a lot of mistakes back before I became a financial advisor. When I was just an investor, I made a lot of goofy mistakes. I tell my kids I coach all the time that the best way you can learn is through failure. I think that's excellent. But again, like you get to know the people, you connect with them. They don't really care what mutual fund you're going to pick for them, what ETF, what stock. They don't really care about that. They want to know that they can trust you with their money. So I think that's an excellent, correlation to what you just said. Such an excellent correlation to people, how they can run their business. And I think that's one of the reasons I was very excited to have you on the show, is because I felt like there was a really nice correlation between the two. So thank you for sharing that with me. Now I do have something. So what are the biggest tells when someone is lying?
Yeah, I always get this, Chris. And it's like,
I'm sure you do.
It's funny because we're bad at it. Right? We're 54% effective was the biggest study ever done by Paul Ekman, who just recently sadly passed last week. But in 1994, he published a study he had about 10,000 people. And this ranged the spectrum from college students to cops to Secret Service agents, FBI, all over the spectrum. And we were 54% effective. And the one interesting part about it was that the Secret Service was like exponentially better than most people at this. They were in the 70, 80 percentile. And his assumption was that our observation skills on protection and the fact that we look at people so much and the fact that many times in the financial cases, the scams we work, we're talking to victims and offenders. So we're kind of seeing both sides of the equation and we're less judgmental. So that was his assessment. Whether it's right or it's wrong is why we tend to be a little bit better at it. The way I like to look at detection of deception is it's kind of like omission is the most common thing that we see. It's just people choosing to not put themselves in a position where they lie. If you want to use a metaphor, it's kind of the dog off the leash. The dog can go wherever it wants to go and it can just choose what not to tell you. Whereas when you put a dog on a leash and you ask it a yes or no question, now it has a problem. So if I was going to try to find out if you were being truthful or not, Chris, I would try to create scenarios where I could have yes or no questions. And the things I'm going to look for is pattern recognition of delay. So that's one of the most common is if you go no, no, and then there's a no. All right. So why is there the delay or the repeating of the question? Like if I ask somebody, where they were from, where they grew up, and did you shoot that person? They didn't re-ask the question, where am I from? They asked the question, did I shoot that person? They're buying themselves some time. You don't always see it, but it's one of the things that I always like to talk about it because when you do see it, it's readily recognizable for most people. So delay. The other aspect of that is vocal inflection. And what I mean by that is did you shoot that man? No. versus did you shoot that man? No. And no with a question mark is different than no with an exclamation point. So when I ask my daughter, did you clean your room? Yes. It's almost like she's saying it going, did he believe me? Right. And then liars also lie very, very specifically. And I hate to use my kids as an example, but son, did you get your homework done? I got my math homework done. That's not the question I asked, right? So I follow up with, did you get all your homework done? And I put an exclamation point on it. And, well, I didn't get my biology done yet. So liars lie specifically, vocal inflection, delay. And the other thing I like to look for, especially in open-ended statements, is any ly statement. So usually, normally, typically, if you sit down with one of your clients and you're asking them about some of the financial decisions that they make, and they say, well, typically, well, normally, well, usually, well, what does that mean? It means there's a lot of other circumstances where typical, normal, and usual didn't happen. Okay. So ly statements, exclusive qualifiers, are things that can be problematic. Sometimes people say, well, if they swear to God or swear to a higher power, that can be an issue. To me, it goes 50-50. But usually, if you ask a yes or no question, you should get a yes or no answer, and it should be in a timely fashion. And if it doesn't meet those parameters, if it's not yes or no and it's not in a timely fashion, put a red flag next to it.
What about someone who says like to tell the truth or to be honest when they say those kinds of things like that?
Yeah,
that
it's
always just
I would
perks my ears up.
Yeah,
It's like, wait, you're
you
not
said it
honest with
perfectly.
me other times?
It perks your ears up, correct? Or when somebody says, it was frigidly cold. Like when they're describing if we're doing two truths and a lie, well, you could have just said it was frigid, or you could have just said it was cold. Why'd you have to add frigidly cold to it, right? So there's certain linguistics as far as how people answer certain questions that can be problematic. Yeah, it should stand on its own to where you don't have to spice it up by saying, to be perfectly honest with you, right? We call that in statement analysis, that's just an unnecessary addition. And is it 100%? Absolutely not. But am I going to do a follow-up question pertaining to that? Oh, you betcha.
So you had mentioned two truths and a lie. I bet you're phenomenal at that game. Are you phenomenal at that game?
I'm good, but it depends on if people think of two truths and a lie as you just spout out, I've done this, this, and this. Well, chances are I'm going to be no better than Chance. Now, if we got 20 minutes and I can walk you through the touches, tastes, the dates, and I can have you go backwards and forwards and tell it from different perspectives, yeah, I'm probably going to get you about 90% of the time. But we're a tribal society that is very, very good at lying and very, very poor at detecting it. Because if we were 100% honest throughout history, you would have got kicked out of the tribe. So we need to be able to say those mashed potatoes were very good, Mom. And we need to, you look great in that blouse, dear, and vice versa. Because if we were 100% honest in our society, we would be voted off the island very, very quickly. There's still a little blind spot there. But if I get 20 minutes, and I say this, I just did a podcast last week where I didn't get it. We're good liars, and we're very bad at detecting it. So I can do this for 30 years and still not be 100% at it for sure.
So along that same line, something when I was listening to some of your other podcast stuff, something that came across in my mind was like, do you play poker? And if so, that's a really long, you get time to like learn all their little tweaks and their fidgets and stuff like that. Is that something that you're pretty good at, reading people in poker?
Well, I would say this. If you could say, hey, Secret Service, polygraph examiner, you do this for a living, you'd think you'd be good at poker, right? But when's the last time you've seen a cop in the final table of the World Series of Poker? It's probably never happened, right?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is
weird.
Yeah, you would think, because we're very risk adverse, right? I'm the person that, as a financial advisor, you'd go, Brad, what are you doing? Why are you putting all your TSP money, all your 401k 7 years out? Why are you putting it all in the most safe stuff? No, that compounding financing, that's when you make your money, Brad. It's because I don't want to lose it, right? I got this money. I don't want to lose it, right? And I'm never going to push all in. And so I may be able to probably get more than the average bear, but the good poker players, they're not risk averse. If they lose it all, I'll get it back. People in law enforcement and most people that have developed wealth don't take chances like that. That's why they have wealth, right? They err on the side of caution. So I would say I might have attributes that are helpful in poker, but not a personality that would be beneficial to that.
That's an excellent response. So you mentioned using all 5 senses in communication. How does smell or touch factor into building trust?
Yeah, touch, handshakes, haptics. You've probably met people over the years, Chris, that I know for me, it's my wife's Sicilian godmother, where she just has the ability to touch you on the shoulder or on the hand or on the elbow, where it's magical, right? It's like a spark. That touch is very, very important aspect. We got to be careful of it in the business sector, but handshakes is the first thing you do. It's the last thing you do in an interaction. We got to be good at it. And I know we talked about that, just a little bit. Obviously, smell, the two senses that are most important to us from evolution are sight and sound, because that's what kept us safe. So from a sight standpoint, I want to be wearing neutral clothing. I want to be, as we discussed earlier, I want to be ventral fronting. I don't want to furrow that brow. From a sound standpoint, I want to have a slightly deeper tone and not be that annoying person. And I want to listen more than I talk. From a smell standpoint, I want to not be my son with the Axe body spray that he's using not as a aroma, but as a bomb that goes off, right? I don't want to, smell should never, we should always err on the side of the caution when it comes to smell, right? But there's a lot of science that goes into when you go into certain stores at the mall, there are specific smells, whether it be a citrus, whether it be certain kinds of potpourri that they use that will actually get you into buying mode. All right. Whereas bad smells can be very problematic. I actually had a suspect one time. He had a defeated body language. I feel as if he was about to confess. And the room that I was in was what you would think of as was an interrogation room from a local police department. It smelled like cigarettes and sweat. And he attributed that from when he was in jail before. And he literally looked at me and goes, "Brad, this smells like jail. I think I should probably talk to my lawyer." And that was it. So smell, you can remember what your grandma's apple pie smelled like, or whatever your favorite dish that your fiance makes. We have such a memory when it comes to that. We code with smells. So smell is so powerful. And then taste. The thing is that when it comes to business, how many business deals are done over food, right? How many business deals are done, over sandwiches, brunch, whatever the case may be, is that we are so attuned to talking at a dinner table because we did it for most of our lives, right? So I truly have had situations where I've interrogated people over McDonald's, Wendy's, whatever the case may be. And I got reciprocity benefit out of that. I'd take $20 out of my wallet and give it to the detective. I already knew what they liked. So I'd say, "Hey, I'm getting some McDonald's. What can I get you?" "Oh, McDonald's. Can I get a Big Mac?" "Absolutely." And mammals, they will not eat when their heart rate's, at an elevated position. So it's diagnostic for me because one, I get a reciprocity benefit by providing food to them, but also friends eat together and they break bread together. And if they are eating, it says to me they're not nervous. It says to me from a barometer standpoint that they're in a good headspace so that now I can have this communication with them. Whereas if they're like, "Man, my stomach's bothered me," that says to me, I still got some work to do. I need to spend some more time on rapport before I start asking some of those hot questions, or in your sense or some of your listeners' sense, before I try to get down to the brass tacks of the business deal.
Right. Well, I mean, you mentioned eating, and I mean, it is amazing how much, like if you go and have a meeting with somebody, like let's just say you're going to meet with somebody like a referral partner or something, you go to meet their office and you hang out. It's a very business oriented type of a deal, and there's hardly any connection. I mean, if you take that same meeting off the office campus and you take it to like a little cheesy, hole in the wall Mexican food place, like all of a sudden the connections start building like crazy because it's an attitude of like, "Hey, I'm not here to like get something from you.
Chilling.
I'm here to connect." Yeah, we're just chilling.
And the more places you associate with somebody, it's, once again, you feel safer with somebody when you move a location. So if I meet you here, and I say this to people on a first date, if you want to have a better impression on a first date, you will have drinks one place and you'll have dinner somewhere else, because subconsciously you're saying to yourself, "I feel safe because I'm going to another place with this person." So good pharmaceutical salespeople will do that. Is the traditional thought was, "Hey, I'm just going to bring in whatever to get to the receptionist to get time with the doc." But when the doc's in his office, he or she, they've got other things to do and they know the sales pitch is coming. Whereas if you can say, "Hey, can I just get 30 minutes? Can we go to Starbucks?" Whatever the case may be. Now, once again, you're subconsciously showing trust because they're leaving with you. So That's a good pickup on your part.
Yeah, I was also I was a pharmaceutical rep for 10 years.
There you go. Gotcha.
So I was the coffee guy. I was the lunch guy. Totally get it. Yeah, got to get them out of their their structure. So one of the things that I was talking about early in the podcast was like health and stuff like that. What habits or routines have kept you sharp during all of these years of high pressure work? Besides like jiu-jitsu, do you like have a diet type of a system that you're in? Are you, I think we had talked off air, you're a carnivore guy.
Yeah, I like carnivore. I won't say I'm religious to it, but processed carbs are the enemy. And it's so easy. Being in the Secret Service for 25 years, it was so difficult to get good, nutritious meals on the roads, trying to get whole foods that aren't processed and avoiding the carb trap, because that's when you constantly keep chasing the dragon, so to speak. You constantly got to get that nourishment, and you're eating every 90 minutes as a result, and your blood sugar gets all jacked up, your insulin levels get jacked up, and the next thing you know, you got a gut. So for me, I was blessed to have a lot of very, very smart nutritional people around me. As far as when I did have my cheat meals, they were typically pretty high in protein and pretty low in sugars. And then, trying to work out at the right time. I'm also a big fan in the morning of apple cider vinegar with honey.
Ah.
I like the taste for it. I think it satiates me a little bit, and it also helps your gut health a little bit, your biome down there. And then probiotics, big fan of that as well. And then drinking water. You got to drink water. And then some of the other stuff is just common sense. Avoid the alcohol, tobacco. Too many people, they just get so accustomed to that six pack or the bourbon or whatever the case may be. And I've got a lot of friends that are into that. And I just try to, if you're going to do it, obviously moderation, but I'll have one drink and then try to follow it up with a cardio session as much as possible. And for me, it's also doing for a long time, I did the CrossFit type physical activity where on the more intense zone 3 side, I've kind of since changed my view on that. I think the worst health I was when I was a triathlete doing Ironmans is that low steady state cardio. You see a lot of people that you see them at the end of the marathon, that 4 or 5 hour marathoner, they have a pretty high body fat count because they're always in that zone 1 or zone 2 cardios. Whereas you see sprinters and people that are doing 800 meters, what's their body type? It tends to be leaner because they tend to train at that higher capacity, that zone 3, zone 4. So that for me, keeping that zone 3, zone 4, and that for me is rolling in jiu-jitsu that's where I tend to be. And also keeping a journal and having some type of device, whether it be a Whoop or there's various other types of products out there that how many calories you're taking in, how many calories you're burning. There's too many people out there, Chris, that they think they're on a diet or they think they're doing the right thing, and they're really in excess every single day because they're drinking that shake that's got 700 calories in it, or they're drinking that caramel macchiato that's got 1,000 calories in it. And you can drink 1,000 calories in about 45 seconds, and it's going to take you about 4 hours to burn that off with cardio. Nutrition it's an 80-20 rule. Nutrition is 80% of being in shape. 20% of it is genetics and working out. So what you take into your body is so much more important than what you do from an exercise standpoint.
Yeah. So before we close it down for the day, I wanted to kind of ask you, what led you to just decide, hey, I want to write a book?
No, I appreciate that, Chris. So for the last 8 years, I was in instruction. So I was teaching the intelligence community and the federal law enforcement community how to do what I had done with Polygraph. And I'd still do Polygraph, but what I found is I got more enjoyment out of teaching people is that you can only be in one room in one day, but if you're with 30 people in one day teaching them, the force multiplication aspect of that and the joy I got out of getting an email 6 months removed where a former student would say, hey, Brad, I did this and it worked, and I put this bad guy in jail, or I found, vindicated this person, that was so enjoyable that I started putting stuff down. I started putting war stories down, and I wrote what I thought was a law enforcement book. And I was blessed that my editor and, the publishing company said, hey, these are a lot of universal principles. I mean, we talked about the SCORE principle and that it can apply to you. It can apply to your listeners. It can apply to parents, teachers, coaches, just as much as it can in the interrogation room. So broadened it out, the focus of it a little bit. And I'm really happy that I just got my pre-order books in the mail yesterday. So that was an exciting unboxing moment when I opened that up because it just seemed like 25 years finally had come on a piece of paper. So actually, the first time I've ever showed it, it came yesterday. So
Great.
It's got we went with some redactions on it to make it look like it was top secret stuff.
I think the cover was perfect. When I saw the cover, I thought the redactions on that is going to light everybody's eyes up.
Thank you. So it was a full circle moment. I got a little emotional last night when I opened up the box from the publisher. So I'm glad I got to show it to you.
So kind of what's next for you then?
I'm still in the government. I still teach. I do some keynotes and some private teaching and coaching and that type of stuff as well. But I'm still in the government. I'm still teaching with our Department of Defense type people. So I'm blessed to kind of still be in the game a little bit, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes. No one, most books, it's like most restaurants, it's like most business ventures, don't make you wealthy, right? They don't make you rich, but we'll see where it goes. It was one of those things where I just really hope it helps people. I hope it helps somebody that can have a conversation with their son, that to create an environment where that son will call him at 2 a.m. Hey, come pick me up, Dad, to where, or whatever, to where it'll help a parent, teacher, coach, or it'll help a law enforcement officer, agent, police officer obtain information to put some bad personal way so that they can't victimize people in the future. So in any of those aspects, if it helped us one person, it was worth putting it on paper.
Yeah, I had reached out to. Do you know Todd Marinovich story? Do you know that? We're about the same age. Todd Marinovich has got a book coming out, and I wanted to see if I could get him on the show. And one of the things that I had said in my email to him was like his story changed the way that I parent. I did not want to be like Marv Marinovich. And so if you guys don't know it, there's a really good 30 on 30. And of course, Todd wrote a book, so, check it out. But, with these kinds of books, they can make such impact, and that impact could be never seen by you, which is one of the reasons I love doing my podcast, because I love exposing people to this kind of information, because it could truly impact. Again, I think what you use as an example is perfect. A father with a son, talking to them in a very open way that allows them to come back and say, "Hey, Dad, I need help." Yes. Oh, I have this story, and I know we're getting close to the end here, but
no, you're fine.
But I don't know if you remember when the whole Robin Hood GameStop thing went down. Mm-hmm. There was this one kid, and he was like a younger guy, but he had leveraged a small amount of money to short GameStop. And so like overnight, he owed like $2 million from this short because of what was happening with the GameStop stock. And he killed himself. And that just broke my heart, because I'm like, why didn't you talk to your dad, man? Like, you know what I mean? Like, come talk to me. Like, if that happens, like, you could have been like, it's fine. You're going to be fine. The stock's going to come back down. And even if it doesn't, you're like 19, we'll just, you just commit bankruptcy. You're not, you just commit. And by the time you're 26, you'll be fine again, but like, just that broke my heart. And so, like having these open communication lanes, could be truly, phenomenal for parents. And again, as a business owner, learning that, like it's not about you, it's about your client, it's about your prospects. And so I think I'm really excited to read the book when it comes out. Are you going to do like an Audible version? Because I actually don't read that much anymore.
Yeah, we just, we picked out the vocal narrator. Nowadays, most like Amazon and the Kindle types, they don't allow you to basically author your own vocally. So we picked out the vocal actor. I guess they're called vocal actors, but it was an interesting concept, so I can't wait to hear it, hear your words spoken by somebody else. So excited about that, so yeah, definitely grab the Audible version.
Yeah, I will. Absolutely. Before we go, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Something that we might have missed?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. We covered a ton of stuff, Chris. You asked me some questions that, nobody else has asked me. And I think definitely opened up, some talking about some areas going into the, financial aspect and management and leadership that normally I don't talk about. Normally I stay in my safe zone when it comes to law enforcement and things like that. So I appreciate the way you asked the questions here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for that compliment. I appreciate that. I truly actually do believe you're a very good speaker, not only today, but in the stuff I've seen. So I don't know if this turns into a speaking thing for you as well, but you should consider it, because you're very well spoken.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Brad, for being on the show. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. I know that I did. As always, I'm going to ask you to hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, do all those things that lets the algorithm know that we're something you want more of. Not only for you and us, but so that other people can find us. That's how people find us, is that you hit the like button, and the next thing you know, someone that shows up in someone else's feed and they hit the like button, et cetera, et cetera. So I do have kind of a cool thing to report. Somebody I didn't even know reshared one of my clips on his Twitter channel, and it already has over 60,000 views and has like 500 reposts and stuff like that. And it's somebody I didn't even know. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for the shout out. And we just appreciate you guys, that you appreciate us. So thank you so much for that. And thank you once again, Brad, for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, have a great day. This episode is for entertainment and information only. The opinions expressed are not professional advice, and listening does not create a client relationship. Always consult your own qualified professional before making any financial, legal, or health decisions.